She creates noise. She creates noise. She's moving through the world with a powerful voice. She creates noise. She creates. She creates noise. She creates noise.
Hi, you're listening to Sarah Nagurney, and welcome to She Creates Noise, a new podcast spotlighting women who power the music industry, coming to you from New York City. Now, if you don't know me yet, here's a little background. I'm a songwriter, producer, manager, educator, and mentor. I've written platinum-selling songs, had tracks on Grammy-nominated records, and released music on both major and independent labels. I've been a jazz singer, a jingle singer, toured with big bands, and became a pop artist, and I performed at festivals across the US, Europe, and Asia. These days, I focus on writing with and developing young talent. In the coming weeks, I'll be pulling back the curtain on the music industry's female changemakers. Some are close friends, others I'm just getting to know, but all have reshaped the business in profound ways. My goal here is to help listeners better understand how the music business really works, and just how instrumental women behind the scenes have been. You'll hear from both sides of the desk: artists, producers, managers, label executives, lawyers, women making things happen, often without the spotlight on them. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now let's dive in. Today's guest, Michelle Fantus, is a music business professional with 20 years of experience across music publishing, distribution, and streaming. She's currently the co-head of A&R at Kilphonic Rights, a global music publishing company and record label. Now, what makes her background particularly unique is her deep experience working with songwriters in artist development and music publishing, combined with significant time spent on the tech side. She's worked at Concord Music, Sony Music, Spotify, and 1RPM in A&R, further solidifying her reputation for identifying and supporting talent in innovative ways. In this podcast, we'll talk to her about, while at Spotify, Michelle spearheaded the groundbreaking playlist Equal, as well as Created by Women, highlighting her commitment to elevating underrepresented voices in music. Her work in artist relations and publishing has helped many artists navigate their relationship within the industry. Now, for those listeners who don't know much about music publishing, it's critical for songwriters and artists to have a publisher on their side collecting the royalties, as well as advising them and setting up collaborations with other artists and other songwriters. In the podcast, Michelle will talk about how, while just getting started at Sony, she created a monthly showcase finding talent to perform in New York City and presenting that new talent at the No Pulp show at the famous Arlene's Grocery. Now, what's really amazing is while she was really just getting started, she had Lana Del Rey, ex-ambassadors, American authors, Rachel Platten, Wakey Wakey, and Dan and Shay at those showcases, which is really impressive. And she's still friendly with some of these artists. I'm especially grateful to Michelle here today because not only all of her extensive industry knowledge and experience, but she's been a key presence on many, many industry panels. And she's not just a panelist, she's frequently the one leading the conversation.
She creates noise.
Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Now, I've known you, I think, for like 10 years, I'm imagining. I knew you when you were at Concord and then when you were at 1RPM and at Spotify, and you've always been incredibly helpful. Thank you so much with all of my people I was working with and with your advice and introductions, and you're a very generous person. We've also been a host of some terrific panels, Digalog Days, South by Southwest, Antisocial, Going Global, to name a few. And I really think that's a tough job. And I take my hat off to you because it's hard to handle people and egos and if conversations go wacky to keep everything running smoothly. So it's especially nice to have you here because I'm a little new at this side of the desk. So thank you for being here and being willing to be my very first guest.
I am honored, truly. Very, very happy to be a part of this. Thank you so much. And I love that you've started this podcast.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of interesting women out there, and I want to kind of raise their profile and make sure that people know how much people that like yourself have trailblazed for other women. Also, I was interested in how you kind of got into this crazy business because it is not a typical choice. I know my parents were not so happy that I chose to be in it. So how was that whole thing for you?
Yeah, well, I was living in New York during college. I went to Pace University and I had interned at Sirius prior to being Sirius XM. And they randomly assign you to different shows. The interns are just kind of randomly assigned. I was assigned to a Cosmo radio show. It was a late night dating relationship sort of call-in show. And I found it really fun to be in an environment that celebrated individuality. Each studio had its own personality. The Cosmo room was pink, and we were next to some sports room that had, little mini basketball hoops, and people were wearing jeans and had tattoos. And I just really loved being surrounded by creative people. And I was always a music fan, and I'm in New York, so I was thinking, what would be a really great music company to work for? And I ended up applying for the only entry-level music-related job on Sony.com, which was Sony Corp of America's website. The only music-related job was Sony ATV Music Publishing, and it was a receptionist position. So I studied up on music publishing. I'm like, oh, this sounds really interesting. They have the Lennon and McCartney catalog, and seems like a growing company. And I nailed the interview. I got the role. And then I was in the building. So I guess that's how I originally got my start into music publishing. And then just always saw the A&R people come in a little bit late, coming from a show the night before, taking all these
I want
meetings,
that job.
real loud. Yeah, I was like, is that not the coolest job in the world? So I realized that's what I want to do, and I set out to hopefully try to do it.
That's great.
She creates noise.
And you've had some other great positions. You worked at, other than Sony, Concord, songwriting and publishing relations at Spotify, and now you've returned to publishing at Kilphonic. How has that transition been?
Yeah, so I mean, at Sony, I had grown. I think I left as director of A&R in 2014, and then, as you mentioned, I went indie, and then indie company was acquired by a mid-sized publishing company. I realized then I thought career-wise, experience-wise, it would be useful for me to pivot and kind of diversify my skills and my network. I had only ever done music publishing, and it started to kind of scare me, like what would be next if I did lose my job. So I pivoted in a year in distro at 1RPM, and then, as you mentioned, on the streaming side. On the streaming side, I was working across music publishing, working with publishers around the world and the songwriting community, trying to create new opportunities to offer them visibility and tools, products for music publishers, so they could see their analytics, things that I never had in publishing that I always wanted, as often someone who's an early member of an artist who is a writer team, or a writer who maybe has cuts with artists coming out, and that song being successful is their success, and that is our success. So I had such a business interest, obviously, in these projects, that I wanted opportunities at streaming companies that didn't exist for music publishers. So I really set out to develop those. But while there and working with publishers around the world, I think I had a really nice perspective, or a useful perspective, on how the various publishers were set up, how they work, how they are proactive with opportunities, at least in the way of DSP opportunities. Coming back into A&R, I was a bit nervous. Would I still be good at this? Can I still go to shows late at night as a mom and an older now?
You're still a kid. You're very, very youthful.
Thank you. I still love going to shows. I've found I can handle that. So I'm grateful for that. But waking up the next morning, or getting woken up, I'm sorry, at 6.
There you go. Oh, of course. Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
But I realize I love it, and I'm so happy to be back. I really missed being able to set up collaborations between writers and artists, and I really missed being a part of that creation process. I don't have much songwriting talent myself, nor have I sought out to ever be a songwriter or a producer. I understand the business. I'm a relationships person. I really love making those connections, and I love being kind of the business mind to complement the creatives I work with.
Yeah, I mean, it's a skill to hear a great song and understand that it's great and to identify talent. So that's a really important skill. And it sounds like the Spotify job was a great hybrid of your skills.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I felt like there I was able to make a difference. I feel like, it's no surprise. I think there's a lot of angst from the publishing and songwriting community towards music streaming companies and music tech world in general. That's a whole can of worms with so many complex issues surrounding it
Yep.
that we don't necessarily need to get into. In the interest of time, I love to get into it if
Yeah.
anyone ever wants
Well,
to talk.
I guess one thing is like something like Amazon does pay better, but it's got so many other strings to its bow that it can afford to pay better, right? Spotify kind of just does that thing.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of nuances to it. I was so happy to take that role at Spotify because I wanted to be an advocate for this world that I came from that I felt was missing. So there were was is I started there in 2020, just prior to COVID, and at the time, and still now, especially now, I think there's a lot of negative sentiment, and I really it's one thing to I think understand or think you understand even because there's a lot that it's a legal there are a lot of legal things happening right now. A lot of details are not necessarily pushed to the public because they can't be. It's really complex situations, but at the end of the day, I'm not a lawyer. I want to put any of those conversations aside, and I was just so frustrated that as a publisher I didn't have anyone to talk to at the streaming companies. And I had these artists who wanted even just to understand how they can help pitch their songs, if at all, or how can they be invited to, songwriting events. And there wasn't much information. There wasn't necessarily a team working with the creatives at the publishing companies. And this was kind of across all of the DSPs. I think a lot of the songwriter and publishing sort of creative partnership iterations kind of popped up around the same time. And they're all really great people. It's just there aren't many of those people at these companies. They're a fraction of the size of the, artist partnerships or label partnerships. But I was just happy that I could be one of them. I feel like I understood the industry. My heart was in the right place. I wanted to be the cheerleader internally. I wanted to raise my hand in company-wide meetings to say, well, what about songwriters? Or can we plug a writer into this program? Or can we tell the story of how the song was written in this program?
She creates noise.
That's great. That's really amazing to have had you there to do that. I mean, I know I had an artist that you helped a lot, and it made an amazing difference for her.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it was just really fun. It was fun. I felt like I could make a difference, and I didn't necessarily have to ask for anything. I mean, I would ask for assets, but I would, it was opportunities and people didn't need to take it. It wasn't like a leveraging situation. And that was one of the first times I ever had a role like that. Whereas in A&R, you're trying to get big rooms, you're trying to get big sessions, you're trying to pitch songs, you're trying to sign and close deals. There's a lot of pressure in a different way in doing that. Whereas, yeah, it was a very different kind of role. And I learned a whole lot that I now am just so happy to take back to A&R. I think I'm going to be a much better A&R in this new role now.
Well, and it's a smaller company again, so it's more agile. How do you find that kind of flexibility?
Yeah, well, being at a small company, and Kelphonic is very much trying to be, we're writer friendly. We want to do writer friendly deals. We want to be transparent with people that we intend to work with and that we are working with. There's a lot of confusion. I mean, music publishing is so confusing. The more I learn about the business and the economics of it all, which I'm constantly learning after being in the music industry for 18 plus years. And I'm also learning that there are so many people in the industry, a lot who have been in it even longer, who don't know a lot of this because publishing is so confusing. And a lot of it, in my opinion, doesn't make any sense.
It used to be a penny business, but I think it's actually like a fraction of a penny business now. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
A lot of work, and territories around the world work differently than other territories. And there's the companies work different, like publishing company to publishing company work very differently. I've seen royalty statements on behalf of writers from various other publishing companies, and some of it, you don't have, you just see a number. You don't know where it's coming from. You don't know when it came. There's so many reasons as to why that might be the case. But anyway, at Alcophonic, we're really trying to do what we can with the information that we have to, build. We have a tech portal where people can see as much information as we're able to share of where their money's coming from. In terms of deals, being at a small company, I think we're able to be really flexible and meet writers where they're at. Not everyone, there are people who want big advances and long-term co-publishing deals, and there are people who want low fee, flexible term admin deals that are relatively short term. And I think there's no one size fits all.
And you're more able to do that at a small company. You can actually offer those different kinds of deals.
Yeah. And I'm surprised every day I have conversations, and honestly, I'm surprised by, there's someone, I don't know, I met with recently, and I was going into the meeting expecting that they were someone who wants a huge check and a long-term co-pub in exchange for, a long-term co-pub versus someone like maybe there's a lot of competition and some companies are just trying to outbid each other. And at the end of the day, I'm surprised with how many writers I'm talking to who understand the economics of it now, that those checks are recoupable. And sometimes you might not want to take that kind of deal and be locked in.
It's your money, basically, that they're holding. Yeah,
exactly. It's kind of like betting on yourself in the future. And I think that is the right situation at times for certain people, and it's not for others. And I guess what I'm saying is I'm surprised with, like, I can never assume because I'm being surprised constantly every day of someone who would prefer a co-pub versus an admin or vice versa. So, we have funding, we have the ability to compete, but we also don't want to do that if we don't think it's in the writer's best interest for where they're at in their career, and vice versa. So we can be selective and flexible, which is fun for me.
She creates noise.
And I know we talked about this a little bit. You're really looking for that special artist right now to sign. So how do you find your artists, and how do you know when it's the right thing?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So because we're a small company too, we don't want to sign, 100 things that we can't necessarily, we don't have the bandwidth right now to service. So although we are as a company in a position to scale our staff as we grow, for me personally, as one single A&R at the company, speaking for myself, I want to be selective. Yeah. So I like to find people. There's a lot of word of mouth. There's a lot of industry referrals. That's great. I love all of those. If anyone out there has any, send them my way. But
and of course, there's that like analytics and TikTok and all that stuff.
Yes, exactly. No, I love organically finding music, and that's something that I'll mention TikTok briefly because TikTok became, I think, a pretty important music discovery tool, especially during the time I was at on the streaming side. I wasn't doing A&R while that really became a big music discovery tool. And I would think to myself, how fun it would have been to have TikTok when I was doing A&R. And I thought that because I would scroll through, and I'm telling you, like, every little scroll session, and I had to limit myself or I would just do it all the time, I would be so inspired and I would find things from all over the world that were just incredible, incredible. Sometimes I would check and see how it was doing on streaming and it wouldn't translate whatsoever. I think there's still a lot of people trying to figure out how to translate TikTok virality, or not even just like any sort of TikTok follow off of TikTok, if they are wanting to do that, you know?
Right.
So which I think business wise, that's a good thing to do if you're an artist or a songwriter. But yeah, I think I was just so inspired. So I still really love to do that. And I do. And I love being in a position where, like, you know what, if we find something and it is so incredible, not only can we consider working with them, but I feel so much more confident in my, like, leveraging my network now, where maybe I can be that person to help them grow and build their team and become a big artist beyond, you know, on the songwriting side and publishing. Wouldn't approach them if I didn't feel confident in the value I could provide them and vice versa. But beyond that, how can I help them grow in their career? And I just, yeah, it's really inspiring to me. So I just have to be selective, and that's hard too, because there's so many incredible people I'm finding and I'm really into right now.
Right. And I know we also discussed a little bit the sort of flip side of TikTok, which is people that are incredibly successful on TikTok and maybe ultimately don't have the goods and they get signed and things don't really work out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's happening left and right. I'm seeing it all the time. I've seen it go full circle where there's bidding wars at the majors and artists are getting deals and it doesn't work out for whatever reason. A lot of them I can count at least a handful off the top of my head that are now out of those deals and into independent deals. I think for me, TikTok, I get inspired by what I'm finding on TikTok more so before it becomes super viral. I think by that time, even if I'm inspired, I'll go after if it's something I feel like, again, we can add value to. I'm personally, and our company is really behind it, and we see a lot of potential. But it's not for me right now in this role. It's not a numbers game. I'm not using TikTok for the numbers.
Right.
I'm using it as just an organic discovery. In fact, when I can find something super early, that to me is more rewarding for me.
That's great. Do you also kind of scour the schools, the Clive Davis, that sort of thing, to look around for talent?
You know, there is great music coming out of schools. Clive Davis is, you know, that program does a lot with the industry here in New York and beyond. I've volunteered for some of their programming, and I appreciate it a lot. I think that, yeah, sure. I think there's certainly a lot of talent coming out of music schools and notable music schools. I think I'm more so like, I'll say I'll find things I really like, and then I notice reading up on them, I'm like, oh, of course, yeah, sure. They go to Berkeley or they go to Clive Davis or they're in the Bandier program. For me, it's not necessarily it's great, but I don't know.
You don't just go after that, because I know there's some people that go like as soon as the kids start the first year and they're scouring that class to see if there's anyone that they want to pick up right away. And there's a bunch of people that have been signed very early on at their time.
Maybe I should try that. But I really especially as I do more with some of these programs, there's incredible talent for sure.
Yep. I'm just looking at my notes. I wondered if you could share a story of a project that you spearheaded and that you're particularly proud of.
Oh, yeah. So while I was at Spotify, I think I love this question because I'm very passionate about this, and it's probably the rewarding work I've done thus far, like at a macro level that touches my day to day, even in my life now, in my role now at Kilphonic. But while at Spotify, they were in the process of launching the Global Equal program, which is the gender equity program. It's an always-on program to amplify women's voices from around the world. And in these early brainstorming internal session meetings about the program, obviously I was like, hey, we should consider this for writers and producers. I wasn't the only one. There was a lot of built-in support around this idea, of course. And just when you look at the stats, it's horrific, the gender inequity across the business. Yes.
That's
definitely.
why we're here today. That's why
Yes,
we're here.
yes.
Yep. For sure. So that was equal that you're talking about.
Yeah. And it was, Spotify being a platform where a lot of the music is consumed in the way of a playlist or a release where there's a title and the artist. And unless you're looking into the credits or you're coming across something on socials or a post or other sort of content on platform, there aren't many ways to kind of draw attention to the people who made or helped create those songs. Specifically in this case, the songwriters and producers. Oftentimes songwriters are artists and vice versa, or producers, but also not always. And very often there are collaborators. So when you look at the stats of women in the industry and there's inequity across the board, artists, songwriters, producers, but the cut from the amount of songwriters and then less percentage of producers, like an abysmal percent in the single digits, which has slowly, I think, been improving over the years. Very slowly.
You mean women producers, in other words?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot more.
Yeah, maybe like 1%, give or take. And
wow,
it's very, very small. But so it was very important I thought if we have the ability to promote and offer visibility to the creators beyond just female artists, then that would be amazing. So we helped launch the Equal Songwriters program as part within the global Equal ecosystem, and that still runs today. So once a month, there's a woman songwriter who is kind of gets visibility through the Equal program, and then as part of the Equal program too, I helped launch a playlist called Created by Women. And this playlist features songs fully written, produced, and performed 100% by women.
Love that one. That was great. I know a number of people have been on that. That was a great playlist.
Thank you.
It's still a great playlist.
Out there. Yeah. It's got, I think it's up to 80,000 followers. Or last I checked, give or take, but we started that organically. It was kind of like going on in the background. It was very difficult to find songs that fit those guidelines. And that was the point too. We would go out to partners, and as we were, there was press around the playlist. As we would go out to publishing partners and PROs and trade orgs around the world, kind of like as a source of info funnel, so to speak, because we were a small team and we couldn't possibly find these all on our own, although we tried. Over time, we did. There was a long, long list of songs that fit those guidelines, like that we used as reference lists. And then anytime we heard of another one or we were flagged, we would put them in the list for future consideration, just anything that met those guidelines. But they're very hard to find. You have to look for them. And then also we didn't want to assume anyone's gender identity either. So we would, if we were going to feature someone, we would do some extra due diligence to check that they do, in fact, to the best of our knowledge, identify as a woman.
She creates noise.
Complicated times. I did know a few people who were on it, and I tried to get some things on there, but just trying to get everyone to be a woman was a wonderful thing, but sometimes harder to get, like the mixing engineer or the mastering engineer. And there's women doing all those things, but I just didn't always have the right combo.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I'm happy that you were particular.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, would have loved to be open, but that the whole point was to get people thinking like, oh, we don't have anything for this. Like, oh, we don't. We should think about this as we're setting up sessions, or even just to start the conversation. And before we launched the playlist, we did some market research with publishing partners and just asked some general questions. And a lot of the feedback was just that, like, you know what, we don't have a lot like this. That's really a bummer. We're going to flag this to our team. Maybe we can think about this as we set up sessions or writing camps.
Yeah.
But it was that was very important to me, and it kind of led to some in-person networking events that we did around the world for specifically writers and producers and industry to network in hopes that it would encourage more collaboration between women, more women becoming producers or learning to become producers. And then I got to know a lot of the advocacy organizations that are doing incredible work around the gender equity in this respect, like She Is the Music and Girls Make Beats. There's Key Change. There's so many, and I love the work that they do. And I think that everyone's heart is in the right place. And while I have this opportunity and platform, and I love this podcast that you've started because it is shining a light on these issues. I think, anyone out there who's in a position to set up collaborations, it doesn't matter if you're artist or your producer, or if your artist is whatever gender identity they have. I think consider women or non-binary producers that you know of out there, like, for your sessions. Yep. I think the more that people can see diversity. People still use the term track guy. People, I didn't know I could be a record producer growing up. Like, that wasn't in the cards. It didn't feel in the cards in the same way that, I think there aren't many women construction workers or pilots or other stereotypical sort of genderized.
Yeah, I had a woman pilot the other day, and it was actually surprising. I came up and everyone's kind of going, wow, it's a woman pilot. It's crazy. Still in this day and age, everyone was really surprised.
Yeah, I think we need to support each other and think about it even. Yeah. And by the way, men are great too, and other genders are great too. Like, there are incredibly talented people all over that identifies everything. But I think just to help close this gender gap, and it's not just in the room in that session. There's so many effects of what a gender gap can do as it kind of flows through culture and history. So
she creates noise.
The next thing I want to talk about, I guess, perhaps maybe advice you would give independent artists trying to get noticed by A&R. What would you say is your strongest recommendation?
Yeah, I think network, and collaborate. If you're an artist, the more writers and producers you meet and you work with and you become friends with, even, you can grow with your peers. It's a very collaborative business. Not everyone needs to collaborate with 10 writers on a song, but if you have a free day, and even if you don't necessarily, if you're not working on a project for yourself, or you're not writing for a sync brief or whatever it is, if you're open to it, schedule sessions, because you can, you'll learn in the session. You'll learn from how that other person works or from their ideas, and vice versa. And you'll feed off of each other's collaborative creative energy. Yeah. But who knows? First of all, you might become friends, or you at least now have a working relationship. And then maybe that friend ends up getting into certain sessions, and they need a third in the room, and then they bring you, there's just, it opens doors to opportunities, and it's so highly collaborative and a friendly business and a social business. Yep. And I know not all artists or creatives are social and outgoing and want to do that. So I'm not saying this is for everyone, but for those,
I agree. because there's some artists who don't collaborate. And I actually recently was going to work with one, and she said, well, I really only work alone. And then I bring in a band, and she produces herself, which is awesome. But I said, I think you will learn a lot. And it's not something you have to do forever. But if you do see how other people work and hear other ideas, there could be something gained.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I've sat in on sessions before, and I'm amazed at how vulnerable they can be. Like I've witnessed some where people are like pulling out their personal journals and like sharing very deep stories about what they've been going through lately for inspiration or ideas. And I 100% know why not everyone would want to do like collaborate or feel comfortable collaborating. But I think there are also other ways beyond co-writes to collaborate and kind of grow your network if you put yourself out there. And yeah, I guess that's definitely a good piece of advice I love to share.
That's a really good point. And we talked a little bit of how you got into the business. And, in some ways it's harder now, I think. It's just there's so many people applying for opportunities. I had a Grammy U mentee that was trying to, she's been working in some interesting jobs, but it's very difficult to find an opportunity. Can you shed any light or suggestions for anyone who wants to break in?
Yeah, it's true. It's hard. I got very lucky, I think, timing wise, and I want to believe I was good for the role, and I nailed the interview and had the right, internship experience. But at the end of the day, too, it was, I think, very much timing. I would, I guess my advice would be similar to as if you were a writer, producer, or an artist, network and go to industry events, put yourself out there, make your ambition known without being too pushy. Talk to people who are willing to listen. Make friends in the business. People are usually pretty cool and they're fun to hang out with. And again, it's a social business. So go to shows. One thing that I did when I was trying to build my own kind of peer network very early in my career is I found a local venue, and with a friend of mine, we started putting on monthly showcases. We called them monthly showcases, and we would just find bands and artists that we were into. Some of them were local. Once in a while, I would kind of get a lead through my role. I think I was a receptionist or A&R assistant at the time at Sony. And I would just put myself out there and be like, hey, I'm putting on a show. We have an extra slot. Would you be interested? But a lot of them were, no-name things that I thought the music was great. Some of them, maybe they were local and we knew they'd have a draw because we had targets we had to hit. But in putting on these shows, where I had no experience putting on shows prior,
Well, I love this.
it helped me build a network of peers, of equally hustly peers, like wanting to grow in the industry. A lot of them were managers of the bands. I am not going to lie that almost every day in my job today, day to day, this comes up, my shows, the shows that I did in my early 20s.
And where did you do those? Where were the venues?
Mostly at Arlene's Grocery.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they were called No Pulp Music Nights.
Wow.
One of the first artists we booked for one of our No Pulp shows, I think this was at a venue called the National Underground, but then she eventually played one of our Arlene's shows, but it was Lana Del Rey when she was named Lizzie Grant.
Wow. And
there were a number of artists that are now big, well-known artists that we ended up booking when they were just in their early days. And it's been, I still know a lot of their managers, and it's so amazing to have watched them grow. And I feel like this connection, even though the artist might not even remember me, we might not have that professional connection. But I feel a personal connection. Like I remember when they played our show and when there were so many people there for them that night. And I remember talking to, the amazing staff. We loved the staff there. A lot of them are still working there today. But we would kind of compare like, oh, this one, you know, they see shows every night there and they're like, wow, this one is really good. They're going to be really big. And it's just been amazing
That's
to.
great. And who else? Who else did you also see in the beginning?
Um, Booked ex-ambassadors a handful of times.
Uh-huh.
They were going by the name ambassadors then. We booked American authors under
Well,
the name Blue Pages. We booked Alan Stone. We booked Rachel Platten once.
so you were in at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's
I
great.
even I booked the CEO of Kilphonic, Caleb Shreve. I booked his band, and I booked our head of creative, Michael Grubbs, who goes by or used to go by the name Wakey Wakey. Uh, he was a singer-songwriter, also in the show One Tree Hill, but we booked him too. So I and now I work for them. So it's really fun, a really fun full circle.
She creates noise.
Well, that's because you just put yourself out there and you tried something and things just came together. So you've got to be brave. This is a business, so you've got to be brave.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I was one more that I was just reminded of this week. But I booked a duo called Bonaventure, and it was Dan Smyers, who's now in Dan and Shay, and Andy Alpert, who is massive, massive songwriter. So it was I look back and I'm really proud of my little younger self for putting on those shows. Anyway, I'll mention all of that to say, just find a hustle, like start working. If you can't get a job in the industry, start something, start managing a friend and learning because it's all about doing and networking and be smart and continue trying to learn and be
Think out of the
professional.
box. Think out of the
Yeah,
box. Yeah.
and cool.
That's great. And also, I love that you did this in New York. And as a New Yorker, and you're a New Yorker, I really want to encourage people to think about, coming to New York to be a writer or, a creative, because it's still a great place to be.
Definitely. Yeah, we're there's a community here for sure, and it's fun to watch it grow. And I think because it's kind of smaller than let's say LA or Nashville, where a lot of people, at least in the US, have moved from New York to go to over the past decade or so. I think that there's unique opportunities here to work within this community, and it's prideful. It feels really nice. I know there's a lot of work has been done to cultivate this community and bring music back to New York, and I think it has ways to go, but I'm feeling it, and as I'm looking for writers here, and my co-head of A&R named Sid Butler is also based here, and we have an A&R coordinator here. We're just trying to build a scene.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think a lot of publishers are the go-to for New York publishing. So it would be kind of cool to have it. It's great to, maybe keep
Bring
that in
New
the
York.
back of our minds. Yeah.
Bring it back. I totally agree. And I guess to finish, I wondered what you think the future looks like for you, or a potential seismic shift in the business in general over the next 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, everyone will answer this, and a lot of people answer this question in relation to AI. And there's so much we could dive into with AI. It will change the business for sure. It's going to change the world. It is right now. It'll continue to. Um, I I think in that respect, I hope that the industry gets ahead of it and works with it versus fight it. I think we saw with streaming uh, that it might just happen. It's probably going to just happen whether we want it to or not. It's going to evolve very quickly. I think it'll evolve just AI,
Frighteningly.
when I say evolve, like AI's impact on music and creation, whatever that ends up looking like beyond what it is today, I think it will, there are threats. There are certainly threats, but if we can figure out ways to monetize it and use it more as tools, I think a lot of people are saying the same thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic, and I just hope that the industry, we should be fighting when music is used inappropriately or when it's a threat. We certainly should be, but I think I think we should also find out how to adapt it in the right way. Where if we assume it is going to happen to some respect, then let's not be in a position where I think that, in my opinion, the industry was fighting streaming or digital in general for so long.
Let's
And
try to
then
get ahead of it rather than like trying to catch up with it. I mean, it might be hard to get ahead of it at this point, but it's here.
yeah, it's really, advise, I advise anyone who's interested in AI and AI's impacting music to just educate yourself and like read up on all the theories and learn about new companies that are starting in these spaces. I mean, they're popping up left and right. Also going back to just to like kind of tie this to the question you asked prior about how do you get started if you can't find a role, it's hard to get a role in music. Look at these music tech companies because there are so many of them, or start your own. There are a lot of ideas on how to kind of bridge these worlds, and it's going to revolutionize everything. And it's all started. It's already started.
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes my head spin. Don't even know how to talk about it. It's wild to think about.
Yeah. It's the future is here. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I want to just ask if there's anything we didn't bring up that you feel you wanted to mention, or any question I didn't ask.
Great. Also, great question. I don't think so. I think that nailed it. If you're in New York, I don't know, go to some of I'm often at the New York industry events. I travel to LA frequently too. Please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people. If you have any great writers, I'm always setting up sessions. I don't know. I'll do my personal plug.
Yeah, it's great. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. And I look forward to seeing you at one of those events in New York.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. I really, really appreciate this. And best of luck as you continue to grow your podcast.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
She creates noise.
I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Heard City, the premier audio post-production company servicing the advertising, motion picture, and television industries right here in NYC. I'd also like to thank Antello, aka XOAN, for singing the She Creates Noise theme that I wrote. Thanks for listening to She Creates Noise. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and share. I want to thank the team here, Blair Reinley, Yelena Stavanovich, Emily Wilson, and the Master of Engineering and Grammy-winning Cooper Anderson. We'll see you next time.
She creates noise. She creates noise. We hear her voice. She creates noise. She creates noise. She creates noise. We hear her voice. She creates noise.